Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Raven's SCP Reactions. Today, I'm going to be reacting to SCP 136, The Naked Doll. Let's get into the video.
Every neighborhood has a house like it. You can probably picture it. That old, decrepit building on the very end of the street. It was there when you moved in, and it'll still be there when you move out. All sorts of salacious rumors spread about houses like this. It's a drug lab. It's a hideout for fugitives. It's haunted. But these are all just stories, right? Some of these houses contain real nightmares, though. Nightmares like SCP-136. There's a grain of truth in every story, and even lies can reveal certain facts about their tellers. That's why the SCP Foundation takes reports of so-called neighborhood haunted houses seriously, and performs regular checks on such buildings to see if any of them are actually the real deal. Children can have wild imaginations, but when children living on the same street, years apart with no reason to have been in contact with one another, all start reporting an eerily similar apparition in that creepy old house, and when the stories go beyond just getting freaked out and delve into truly life-altering traumatic paralytic terror, then the Foundation really can't afford not to look into it.
Exactly.
One otherwise quiet morning, in a sleep...
I'm like, shit, something goes down, you know, everybody's saying the same fucking thing, or the same thing keeps happening in that house. Something's wrong with that damn house. Don't go in it.
American town, a convoy of fumigation and asbestos removal trucks pulled in, surrounding that creepy old house at the end of the street. Residents were probably thinking, it's about time someone tore that old death trap down, as people in protective suits spilled into the building. These were, of course, Foundation field agents who would perform a routine sweep around every room and fully catalog the place. It looked like a pretty typical abandoned house. Peeling wallpaper, dusty, rotten furniture, all the trash and rubble that seems to appear in the absence of human life. The full sweep took little more than an hour, but towards the end of the observation period, Agent Sims, a field agent posted in the former child's bedroom, began acting strangely. He posed a question over the team's shared radio frequency. Hey, can anyone else hear that laughter? Confused, the other people on the team responded that no, they could not hear any laughter. A few other agents came to check on the room, but they didn't hear any laughter in there either. Even though Agent Sims appeared visibly uncomfortable, there was no identifiable source for this discomfort. The other agents left him so they could continue investigating the rest of the house. Other than one agent's fraying nerves, there didn't appear to actually be anything anomalous about the house. Then Agent Sims screamed and jumped out of the second-story window of the house, sailing down towards the ground and fracturing his spine on impact. What could have made him do that? We're talking about an SCP Foundation field agent here, a highly trained individual handpicked by the Foundation to observe and track terrifying and potentially deadly anomalies out in the field. What could he possibly have seen in that decrepit old house that would lead him to believe leaping to his death was a preferable alternative to facing it?
I don't want to fucking know.
That the Foundation absolutely had to get an answer to. They intensified their search on the child's bedroom as the body of Agent Sims was carted away.
Jumped out the window.
That's when they found the object that they would later deem as SCP-136-1, a little rag doll made of old cloth. The kind of thing you could easily imagine getting carted around by some ragamuffin child at the turn of the last century. This was the only object of interest in the entire room, so it was tagged, bagged, and taken back to the nearest Foundation containment facility for further testing. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. When the doll was first brought into its containment chamber, one particular scientist on the research team, Dr. Myers, a headstrong young researcher freshly farmed from a prestigious university, took a morbid interest in the doll. Something about it, even in the absence of readily apparent anomalous effects, made her feel oddly uncomfortable. The doll seemed to carry a vague aura of doom. Was this what made Agent Sims act the way he had? Or was this only the beginning? A D-Class was brought in for the first wave of testing. The unfortunate former arsonist was forced to simply stand around in the room with a doll and wait until something interesting happened, and for 20 minutes, no anomalous activity was reported. Then the D-Class began frantically looking around the room, like a frightened animal. Dr. Myers, who had been observing the test, radioed in and asked what was happening. "It's this laughter, this weird, freaky laughter, like some crazy lady is in here. I can't see her though. Can any of you see her? Can any of you hear that?" They couldn't see or hear anything. According to all of their monitors,
you're fucked,
it was
buddy.
just a lonely D-Class standing around in an otherwise empty room with nothing but a rag doll. 5 minutes after the D-Class reported hearing the eerie laughter, he collapsed to the ground, shrieking like a maniac and crawling away from something he could not see. He was emitting the desperate screams of a man who truly believed something was about to take his life. But nothing was there. He backed into the corner of the room,
I don't want to see that
gibbering
thing.
incoherently and scratching desperately at the wall until his fingernails were ripping off, leaving bloody traces behind. In the end, a pair of guards entered the chamber and had to drag him out. The D-Class had urinated in fear and seemed to have temporarily lost the use of his legs from sheer panic. He was out of commission for several hours afterwards, breaking into on and off screaming fits whenever someone approached him. Upon reviewing the footage of the experiment, Dr. Myers noticed something strange. The moment that the D-Class had begun screaming, the doll had disappeared from the room. It only rematerialized in its previous position when the D-Class was finally dragged from the room. Eventually, the D-Class became lucid enough to be properly interviewed about his experience. He said that after first hearing the laughter, a sense of overpowering dread had begun building within him. 5 minutes later, that was when the entity, later dubbed SCP-136-2, first appeared. The vision that appeared to him could generously be described as human, but it was a little too tall to really qualify. The monster appeared to be female, but like a freakish Carnival House of Mirrors exaggeration of what one thinks of being female. Long, flowing hair, large breasts, and a Barbie doll thin waist. She looked like the nightmarish doodle of a hormonal teen boy come to life, with a face twisted into a rictus grin somewhere between arousal and agony, showing way too many teeth. The creature was nude and posed provocatively, but it was anything but appealing. The D-Class reported that just seeing it was the most frightening experience of his life. And then, it started moving. It was slowly floating through the air towards him like a vengeful ghost, that painful smile getting wider as it drew closer to him. The D-Class could only describe the whole experience as feeling like death itself was coming towards him. When the creature was finally looming over him as he cowered in the corner, it opened its tooth-lined jaws and let out a long, piercing shriek before disappearing. In the following weeks, the D-Class was kept for testing. He experienced severe night terrors every single night afterwards, all of them related to SCP-136.
That scream it emitted, the scream it emitted seems to have had an additional psychological effect where he's now dreaming about it. At least that's what I'm thinking. Let's continue.
36. Further tests looked into the doll itself, but there didn't seem to be anything anomalous about its construction. It appeared to be made from the kind of plain, non-anomalous materials you'd expect from any doll of this variety, though occasionally, the exact materials would change, even between observers. In addition to the most common cloth variety, witnesses have reported the doll being made of clay, wood, and metal, with 10% viewing the doll as male, with the rest all agreeing that the doll is female. The Foundation conducted a battery of tests on the doll, just to make sure that the results were largely consistent across all subjects. Over 25 subjects were tested on SCP-136, all reporting roughly the same results. Laughter after 20 minutes of observation, a few minutes of silence, and then, according to subject testimonials, the appearance of the same grinning, naked apparition, inducing a state of truly primal terror in its victims. Interestingly, not all of the subjects were D-Classes. Some were volunteering scientists who were aware of the potential effects, but let their morbid curiosity get the better of them, thinking they would be prepared to face whatever terrifying vision would manifest from the doll. But in every case, they were reduced to the same screaming, traumatized wrecks. But when a Foundation researcher named Dr. Simon, the 25th subject of the SCP-136 experiments, volunteered for testing, things took an even more horrifying turn. During
Oh,
the testing
shit.
period,
Gets worse.
Dr. Simon had the unusual experience of not actually seeing the SCP-136-2 entity. After being told how terrifying it was by coworkers, he was a little disappointed that he didn't get to share their fears. Later that day, he went to get himself a warm cup of coffee from the site's employee break room. His coworkers became concerned when his coffee mug dropped to the ground and shattered, as Dr. Simon pointed into a nearby empty hallway and began screaming. He claimed that he could see her floating down the hallway towards him, her face twisted into that menacing grin. As none of the other scientists could see what Simon was seeing, they surrounded him and attempted to calm him, assuming that he was perhaps the victim of some kind of sudden psychotic break. But minutes later, every scientist in the break room collapsed and fell unconscious. Not long after, they all began to wake up, except Dr. Simon. He had fallen into a coma and died while still on life support 3 days later.
Oh my god.
It was the first report of SCP-136 causing a death since Agent Sims' unfortunate fall. Dr.
Holy
Myers immediately
shit.
requested that SCP-136 be reclassified from Euclid to Keter Class,
Yes.
so more resources could be allotted for its containment.
Yes.
Administration denied any changes to the containment procedures of
Why?
SCP-136, frustrating Dr. Myers. But little did she know that it was because site administration had ulterior motives for SCP-136.
Can anybody say
who they
Vault
were,
Tech?
whether they were the hardened killers of D-Class, the trained soldiers of the Foundation Field Agent Corps, or jaded scientists who had seen any number of horrors each week as part of their normal jobs. SCP-136 had the unique ability to reduce its victims to terrifying wrecks. In a move that feels decidedly more in line with the Chaos Insurgency, Site Administration had started using SCP-136 to assist in enhanced interrogation with detained people of interest. Even the toughest nuts to crack soon became very talkative after the appearance of SCP-136
Serpent's hand.
traumatized them.
Them motherfuckers don't talk.
Essentially, the administrators were making a kind of deal with the devil, allowing SCP-136 more free reign, in exchange for them gathering valuable intel from these victims. But as always, the problem with making deals with the devil is that the devil is always going to collect his due in the end. Dr. Myers' warnings would continue to fall upon deaf ears, even as the creature's powers seemed to grow. Tests on D-Class continued, with the entity traumatizing a whole group at once during one of these experiments.
What?
However, when Dr. Myers herself, along with a few agents, entered the testing chamber to drag out their twitching bodies, they all fell unconscious. When Dr. Myers woke back up, 3 of the D-Classes had fallen into comas like Dr. Simon, and died shortly after. Dr. Myers pleaded with the administration to terminate the doll, but her requests were denied. It was proving to be too valuable in its various interrogations, and besides, nobody was sure if the doll could even be terminated. Whenever it was damaged, it simply disappeared and reappeared within a 1-meter radius. The only thing that hadn't been tried was full vaporization, which Dr. Myers' superiors refused to sign off on. SCP-136 was here to stay. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for Dr. Myers herself. After one more unfortunate testing incident, where a D-Class disappeared entirely in what seemed to be clear evidence of SCP-136's growing power, Dr. Myers implored Site Administration to reclassify the anomaly and slate it for termination. It was getting more powerful, more unstable, and more dangerous. But rather than terminate the anomalous ragdoll, in the end, all they did was remove Dr. Myers from the SCP-136 case. With her gone, there was one less thing for them to worry about as they gave more and more victims to SCP-136, using its dark powers to torture detained people of interest into telling them everything they wanted to know. But with the entity seeming to grow more powerful with every victim, it seems very likely that Dr. Myers' worst fears will come true. And one day those controlling the terrifying anomaly will find that they're the ones hearing a strange, evil laughter coming from nowhere at all. Now check out SCP-16.
Yo. This is what I'm talking about, man. Jeez. Things just getting more and more powerful. And we already see it. It's out of the containment unit. It followed the guy into the break room or whatever. And things just getting more and more powerful, and they keep using it. I understand they're using it to interrogate, the guys that they get and stuff for information, pump them for information, but holy shit. This is just another example of them doing crazy things like that. Oh man, hey, listen. Just theory craft in the comments below where you think this thing might have come from, who might have made it, because or even like your view on what they should be doing with it. I agree with that doctor. Vaporize that goddamn thing. If you can destroy it, destroy it. Because some of these things are just too dangerous, So, yeah, go on, put some comments in the below, and yeah, like, share, subscribe.